Rob here hanging out at the Grammy Museum, about to go inside for a conversation with Tom DeLonge, aka Poet Anderson, and also to see a teaser of his upcoming short film starring Teen Wolf star Tyler Posey. His yet to be titled short film coincides with his newly released novel Of Nightmares, which was co-written with New York Times bestselling author Susan Young. All right, let's go inside.
You know, I used to pretend that the Grammys weren't even real until we got invited to be on the show when Blink announced we got back together.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, maybe now I'll validate them. I don't have it.
And how did that experience go okay?
It was good.
Did we treat you okay?
I remember, yes, it was good. And we were about ready to come on TV and say that we were coming back together. And the Coldplay guys were there, and I really wanted to, I was like, hey, I like your record. But right next to them was, what was the big boy band at the time? Oh, the Jonas Brothers. Freaking out. They're going, hey, we love your band and stuff. And I'm like, nice, you guys are cute. But I was talking to the bass player guy, the Coldplay. I was like, hey, this new record's really good. Oh, hold on a second. God, you guys are cute. Your jeans are so tight.
No, don't take that the wrong way. Well, thank you very much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. I want to talk about the animated short film that came out before the book as a means to kind of get into the book a little bit. Tell me how the whole kind of concept of Poet Anderson came about.
It's a long one. I remember that I was, many years ago, I've said this story before, so some of you might have heard it, but I was in Paris, and I was at this really cool hotel. So you got to picture Paris at night. I think it was like raining outside, and it was right down in the cool kind of district. It's a hotel called Lacoste, and I've only stayed there once or twice. But I was locked in this little room that had no windows. But when you look out the windows, you see all that kind of the tops of all the buildings in Paris. It just looks it's very French. It doesn't look like Los Angeles or San Diego where we grew up. But so I was thinking, I was like, man, this looks like a place that Peter Pan would frequent. And that's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah.
And kind of in my mind, a Pink Floyd version of Peter Pan was a little character named Poet. I just pictured this character in my mind. I don't know where it came from, but it just made sense. The bowler hat, the umbrella, dancing across these rooftops. We set them ablaze. No, that's the truth. That just came to me. God rest Critter's soul. That was his favorite lyric that I read. My old producer. So in any case, but then it just stayed there. It was just an idea. Many years later, I was trying to figure out a story that was interesting with this character because I was really interested in doing a movie. I always thought that people that made movies had they had a leg up on us musicians because when you watch a movie, you're like in seats, it's quiet. You're when you hear a new song or some shit, you're like
people are screaming.
I'm thinking the radio. It's like staticky, and they're in traffic, and they're yelling and honking the horn or something.
Right.
So I always thought a good way to debut music was with a movie. So I was trying to really think in my head what would be a cool character that can kind of lead you through that. So then I'll come forward, and I saw a documentary from Stanford on nightmares. And this whole thesis they were developing that nightmares prepare you for real-world events. They would have some guy play video games for like 3 hours straight, and they would put him to sleep. They would know when REM sleep would hit, and they would see him going through these little nightmare sections of his dreams, and then they'd wake him up, and they'd wake up at like 5 in the morning. So what? They're all, here, play the video game now. And he's like playing the video game, and he would be better at it. And it's because they knew he was running through different scenarios throughout his sleep of what he was doing. So that was really interesting to me. So I thought, well, what if this character was the one that was guiding you through these scenarios? And that's really where it started to become fascinating.
Yeah. And I want to get into that because I'm interested in this whole Stanford sleep study and study on dreams. But I understand that some of the original animated movie was inspired by an anime series in Japan, and I'm going to mangle this name, Aoki Densetsu Shoot.
Well, you are speaking probably the language of Sergio and Edgar, my directing partners. The Martins, yeah. So these guys are hardcore animators. That's what they do. And I knew I loved Akira, which is a really cool animated cult film from the 80s. It's like cartoon, but it's blood.
Yeah. You guys know this? Yes?
Yeah. Kira's pretty
Somehow I knew that, but that's okay.
And so I would talk to these guys with the little that I knew about animation. I just said, listen, it can't look like Disney. It can't be American, but it can't be completely Japanese either, because I think that would alienate what I'm trying to achieve. We got to come up with a type of artwork that lives right in the middle. I spent a good year and a half or so coming up with concept art before they ever got involved, so I already kind of narrowed down what the illustrations look like.
You were drawing this, or you were finding images?
No. I worked with a really dope illustrator named Mike Henry. That's what he does.
Yeah.
He illustrates these really stylistic characters. I found him at Comic-Con. The whole thing about Comic-Con, as big as it is, was supposed to have artists find producers, you know, and that's how I found him. He had a book, and he was like this big guy with beard and tattoos, and he was all like a teddy bear, and which is funny because this is so wrong for me to say this, but I'm sorry. I remember
we love that here.
One time I was trying to get him to draw a really fucked up little character, and I was like, just make him look retarded, and then he goes. He was like, I'm hitting the phone. He's like, how can you say such a thing? I'm like, dude, you're like as big as I am with tattoos and like a beard. You're like a man. You're a man. Draw it, you know. But he's a really, really good guy, but even more talented. So I worked with him for a year and a half, and I would just get, has to look scarier, has to look more haunted eyes, has to have sharper features. You have to have him. He's got to be in tight jeans, you know. This is punk rock kid, you know?
And the Jonas Brothers. So.
And the Jonas Brothers, and, you know, like I make them skin fucking tight. But when I finally had what Poet looked like, I sent that to Sergio and Edgar, and then I would describe kind of the macro ideas that I had in my head. But those guys would come back referencing the things you just said that are in different languages that I'm supposed to know about.
So was there anything in particular about you know, anime that interests you, or was it just that you had hooked up with the Martins and that was their kind of influence?
I was interested in good artists, and I knew when I saw their art, I said, these guys are cool, because you can't really teach cool.
Right.
I mean, I know it's subjective, but I just knew that these guys did really cool shit. And I knew that if I gave them enough guidance, they would be able to fall into a realm of what was in my imagination, but at the same time, it would be a lot better. That's the whole point. You want to find an artist that's really, really good, and he can come, and the collaboration it comes out so much better than you hoped. And so they knew what they needed to do to fit the illustration and concept arts that I was creating, and they said, okay, this is a way we can tie all of this together. And it was a long process. I mean, there were some. How long? Oh God, we worked almost 3 years on that thing. I would have illustrations come of some of the characters, and they're, you know, not all the characters that cool. You know, some of them were like pretty far off, but once we realized what we were going, you know, what really threw them for a loop was every time I would say, it has to be more adult. Okay, more adult, Tom. We understand, Tom. Well, no. Like, make it like we're gonna piss some people off or something. You know, it's gotta be violent. This is for like, you know, adults in their 20s and 30s. This is for me. You know, and so what they did, I remember the big debate about a nipple. I was gonna put a nipple in there, floating across this nipple. But even that was like a big thing to them. They were like, Tom, really? You want nudity?
But you know, speaking of the adult thing, I read that a couple of the influences here, in terms of, you know, perhaps the storyline or the vibe of the thing, a Clockwork Orange,
very Clockwork Orange,
Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I mean, these are, you know, not exactly, you know,
like the best things to say.
Yeah, not exactly happy ending, you know, Disney films.
That's true. Yeah. You know what's funny is in Angels and Airways, Alon, our drummer, he learned. It took him a couple years, but he finally called them Tomisms. And it was, to him, he felt like he like solved gravity or something. You know? He realized that when I say something, I'm referencing an emotion. He never got that. Like, I would say something that's like kind of Pink Floyd right here, and he's okay, minor, fifth, seventh. Play it backwards, stand on your head, and do acid. And I was like, no. I mean something that's, I don't know, makes you want to like fall asleep, but yet you're gonna have a pretty red dream. You're gonna wake up and you have blood on your chest or some shit. We realized. So when I reference things, I reference emotions. Yeah. But Poet looks like Clockwork Orange, you know, the bowler hat.
Right.
We tried to make the city of Genesis this kind of dream set. I really like Blade Runner. A guy named Sid Mead was an artist that did that stuff. He's also the guy that drew Tron's Light Cycle. He's also the guy God, he did everything. I mean, in all the early 80s sci-fi stuff, he was the godfather of science fiction kind of illustration, and I was a big fan of his stuff. And I didn't want our stuff to look like modern. I wanted to have a retro feel of some sort. So
it strikes me as I'm listening to what you're saying here, it's as much about the look as it is the story.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. Almost more so.
Yeah.
I work in blocks, right? So even with songs, like it might strike you as odd. I'm not the most detail-oriented guy.
I'm shocked.
I know.
I'm shocked.
But I like big macro brushstrokes, and so before I do something, I kind of believe, and I think this in life too. I like to know what the end result is, and then I work my way back. And the end result to me is usually about 4 or 5 pieces of things. And so to me, it was like Poet was a character from the Clockwork Orange that was charismatic but yet had darkness in his eyes in a city that looked like Blade Runner, but with these guys on bikes that looked like Tron, with a whole bunch of other stuff I can't quite define, just yet. But to me, that's how I started.
And that's a perfect segue into the book.
Sure.
Because and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems as though you wrote the book to expand on the world that you created.
Yes, absolutely. It wasn't like we just sat down and started typing a story about a guy that has lucid dreaming and lost his brother and this or that. So what I did was I wrote 2 screenplays. I wrote a screenplay about a character in a rainy Seattle suburb with his few friends fucking around with frequencies. I had this interesting idea that when you sleep, the frequency your brain is operating on, I thought that'd be really interesting if those were different places in the universe, because it's so hard to get to other places. Have you ever tried? It's hard to go across the universe. So I thought maybe, well, a lot of people think the only way we can communicate...
I'm sure these people have done this.
I would think they would.
Yeah.
I hope so, if you guys like the shit I'm into. But. Consciousness there's a theory that consciousness is the only way we're ever going to either travel or communicate to the stars. And so I was kind of thinking frequencies of consciousness. Doesn't matter. But I wrote this story, a screenplay where it was actually really funny. These in the original screenplay, the 2 kids that were friends of Poet, they put an ad in the newspaper. Actually, this scene was pretty funny. They put an ad in the newspaper for people that they'll pay them, and as long as they can put like a bunch of wires on their head and fuck with the frequencies on their head while the person sleeps. So this girl shows up at the door, and the Poet was just like, well, who's she? And they're all, don't worry, we already vetted her out. And they're all, you're gonna have to take off your clothes. And she's like, wait, why? Or trust us. And he's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? So right, it's just science, So I was having a lot of fun with that screenplay. But then I said, okay.
I'm thinking I like it already.
Yeah, it's good. And then I wrote another screenplay that was very futuristic. And I said, okay, well, let's play with themes of the Bible. Which, not in a religious way, but this just, an army of individuals doing something really bad, and an army of individuals doing something really positive, but in a futuristic setting. And I spent over 100-some pages on each one. And then Ben Cole came. I met Ben Cole. Ben's a writer, a screenplay writer. Yeah. And Ben comes and he reads both of these and he goes, these are both amazing in different ways. I think we combine them. And that's how it started.
Is that how the book got?
This is the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
And it was the combination of both of those screenplays into one screenplay that we sent over to Suzanne.
Yeah. But I want to stop you there because a lot's been written about kind of how the book came to be, and you say in the preface of the book that what you really like is, in terms of the process, is just quote unquote feeling with people in terms of your collaborators. And can you define that a little bit? That's a very interesting idea.
Yeah. Well, I think I learned over the past handful of years that what I really enjoyed about a band wasn't being on stage. It was just the idea that I'm involved somehow in leading a group of people to feel something at the same time. I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. That's what I kind of dissected. I was doing a lot of things. I was equally interested in a lot of different things besides just music. and so a lot of people are wondering, why would you not want to be on a big stage doing all this stuff? And I just, oh God, do I Instagram this? Am I supposed to go on Instagram and tell you all these things that I feel about? I don't. But really, what it boils down to is I have a pretty wild imagination, and I have a few set of skills that I've developed, not only inspiring artists or leading people or putting business models to things or being entrepreneurial and also understanding. I'm not really good at any one thing, but I'm decently good at a bunch of different things. And I kind of figure, I said, it might be a really good place for me to sit in the middle of a bunch of artists that come together that can do something a bit more revolutionary than each artist doing one thing on their own. Yeah. And that's where that came from.
Because you also said that you actually didn't really know how to write a book.
No, my God, you just write a bunch of shit. I never read a book.
So I mean, I'm interested in knowing how you helped yourself learn to do that.
Well, the screenplays were something I had a knack for, because they were more technical than. Actually, you know what? That's wrong, because the first screenplay I wrote, I had an older agent that was involved on the whole poet thing from the early days. I sent him a screenplay of a different idea that I was working on, and he goes, "My God," he's like, "Why is it? What did he expositional? Don't make it so expositional." And I was like, "Fuck does that mean?" Google. And so what I learned was, it's so interesting. Screenplays don't have any description whatsoever. It's all technical. Don't put description in there. The director does that shit. Don't do that. It's like what? It didn't make any sense to me, but it's a really big difference. So I'm like, well, that's easy. I can write a screenplay if I don't have to describe shit. It's just a bunch of. The guy walks over, grabs a glass of water. Another guy walks in and says, "Let me give you some water." To me, it was easier. So I started going through that a lot, and then I started to understand how scenes kind of roll into each other and how there becomes an arc.
Right. And what strikes me about kind of what you've set up here, in terms of working with the bands that you've worked with or on the book, you are a collaborative person.
Yeah.
So,
as long as it goes my way.
I forgot that part. So how did you go about finding the people to collaborate with to make the book happen?
So it was interesting. A good friend of mine is one of the people that runs Lionsgate Films. And I was talking to him about a different idea that some people here might know about called Strange Times, which is you guys are gonna love it when it comes your way. And he hooked me up with a producer. That producer says, "You know what? Let's bring in someone to help polish up the screenplay that I wrote for Strange Times," and that was Ben. Mm-hmm. And that's how right when I met Ben, I said, "Yes, work on that screenplay for Strange Times, but I want you to work on this poet thing." After we did that, I already had the animators. Those guys sent me an animation through like my management or something, and they sent me the little Blink bunny.
The same dudes, the Martins?
At the Martins. They sent the little Blink bunny flipping around, doing all these really cool little jumps and stuff. It was just so cool. I was like, "They're all, we want to work on anything you got." I'm all, "I have something for you right now." And then Ben came, and they were already starting. But in animation, it takes a long time. I mean, a lot of that stuff was 3D, so they gotta draw it, rig it, animate it. It's just there's so many, you gotta light it, and it's just insane how long it takes. So they were doing all these foundational ingredients to be able to animate the film later. And then we came in with Ben, and Ben helped me kind of gather all these stories and make one kind of cohesive story. And then it comes to Suzanne's part. So I was like, okay, now it's time to get this novel off the ground. I'm off. What do I? I don't want to write a novel. Like, that sounds like a pretty big job. And I was like, but I was looking at the two screenplays. There's 300 pages right there. I was like, I kind of already did. But so I said, you know what? Fuck it. So I just look on the internet and I start going through. I said, well, who's Dan Brown's agent? I swear to God,
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good place to start.
And I found one agency, and I was like, these guys, and they didn't answer the phone. And I was like, all right, well, let's find someone else. And I found this list of like the top 10 author agencies, and I was like, I'll go to number 2. So I go to their website and I said, okay, well, shit. And he says, about us. I hit that and it pops down the little menu. Then it's all our agents. I was like, all right, hit the little agents there. And then there's all these people with their pictures, like Olsen Mills and shit. And then I went down to one, and this guy named Jim McCarthy has this description that's all, he had a knack for or loved the paranormal. And I said, all right, well, I'm calling you then. You know, it's me. I was like,
I'm home.
I'm home.
Yeah.
So I hit up Jim, and he was tripping that I just called him out of the blue. He's like, is that really you? You know, yeah, hey. And I told him a little bit about what I was doing. He's like, okay, got it. Well, let me think about this for a little bit, and I'll get back to you with some ideas. And a couple weeks go by, and I'm just thinking he didn't buy any of my bullshit.
Yeah.
He's just like, got it. You got a sideways hat, these big Dickie shorts. You know, been naked on TV a lot. I didn't think he was going to give me like his best author, you know, or anything like that. But 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, he hits me, okay, here's a bunch of ideas. And I was like, oh shit, this is dope. He's like, he really listened to what I had to say. It wasn't until my wife, and who's here? Jennifer's here somewhere tonight. She's hiding in the shadows somewhere. But I was talking to my wife about 3 different authors that I was considering, and she's like, "You're out of your mind. That one, it's obvious." And I was like, "Oh, Suzanne, yeah, you know." I'm all right.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
What made her say Suzanne was obvious?
I think she had her own reasons, but I think it was that Suzanne was very accomplished. You know, when you kind of take a quick, you just have a gut feeling when you look at other artists and you can kind of do a quick snapshot of what they've accomplished or what their work is, you can come to a pretty quick opinion sometimes. And I think for her, she was able to just go, Suzanne is like, well, this is the thing, because Suzanne's writing books about teenagers that are left of center, dark, cerebral, psychological thrillers. You know, and I have a character who can dream while awake, who doesn't know if he's dreaming or not, that lost his parents, that thinks he's going fucking crazy. You know, so it all really made sense. So I said, well, damn, let's see if Suzanne's interested. And so I hit back Jim, and he goes, let's set up a call. And Suzanne was just, she's, oh my God, she's like jumping out of the phone. So like, she watched the animation, she was tripping. I sent her some like rough version of hers, and she was just like so excited because she listens to music when she writes her books. Like,
but was she excited about this is Tom DeLonge from Blink-182
yes.
and Angels and Airwaves calling me, or is she and no disrespect, but
how do you get excited about it?
Yeah, is she excited about Poet Anderson?
She's a teacher at the time, right? So her book, The Program, was just selling like a lot of books. Yeah. And but she's still a job. You know, a lot of authors don't really, they all have to have jobs. There's not that much money. A lot of
musicians do too.
I know, it's true. Yeah. That's true. Really? I know. It sounds like such a dick. It's true.
It's a bummer, but it's true.
And I get it. It's sad because with books, movies, and music, the art is now kind of free, so it really hurt the industry of all those. But she was like so stoked that I called her because she's a teacher. My students aren't going to believe this. But when she actually watched the animations, I painted a world for her to immerse herself in. There's no questions left. She got it, which was cool because if it was a year earlier, I'd be like, no, it's really cool. This guy's gonna look cool and it's gonna like be rad and gnarly, and it wouldn't have translated.
And so talking a little bit about kind of that process, the collaborative process, particularly working with Suzanne. I'm wondering, compare or contrast, collaborating in a band, collaborating on a book.
So that's a really good question, right? It's different because in a band, you guys all have similar skill sets. Granted, one guy plays the drums, one guy plays bass or whatever, and you don't really get to perform those instruments in there. But when it comes to assembling a song, I can say, hey, I'm thinking we're doing a double time drum beat here, and I think on this part, I think it's double time, and on this part, we go even triple time. That's just a punk rock joke. Everything's fast, play faster. By the way, one time we had bottles thrown at us, we're playing fucking faster. Didn't work, the bottles just kept coming. But when you're running a book, I'm not an author like that. I don't do what Suzanne does. Yeah. She'll go away to a cabin and really just completely jump in to somebody's, like the most tiniest little details somebody does when they're looking at a girl or a guy, or when their heart's broken, or just like the littlest things. And I can't do that. And so it was really easy to let her be her, and to trust her skill set. And she was really smart. She had good ideas.
Yeah. Were you giving her kind of the, for lack of a better term, broad strokes direction on story and character, and letting her kind of create plot and dialogue?
So what we would do is we have these conference calls, and we had the structure of the story. I knew what I wanted that to be. I already did that, combined the screenplays. We already knew. But the comics, we were working on that too. Ben was writing the comics, so we were starting a little bit earlier in the comic series, and going into a little bit kind of origin story. And we would walk through all of these things. We would we spent a long time debating rules of the dream world. That's something that's really interesting. I was like, just let shit happen. And they'd be like, you can't just let anything happen in the dream world. You cannot do that, you know. And I was like, all right, so we would have these grand debates. But this is the funny thing, is like Suzanne, she's just like, you guys and your glowing motorcycles and laser gun blasts. She thought that stuff, she's like, it's cute and it's cool, but that's like, there's this relationship thing here. We never landed the relationship thing without Suzanne. She really brought that to the table. We had all the cool action, violence, and just the stuff that's going to make the live action movie just so insane. She brought the relationship thing, the thing that makes the book really insane.
Well, I mean, the characters really do jump out, even for old guy who read the book. The characters.
Thank you, by the way.
Well,
Thank you.
It's actually very cool. But here's the one thing, and I always say this is the one conceit about being the old guy, is get to the end of it, it's go, I want a resolution. I don't want to worry about what's next. Tell me how it happens. But anyway,
that's the big debate, though.
Yeah, right? I get it. I get it, and that's just me because I don't have enough time to read enough books. But anyway, but it's that character development and getting a sense of kind of who these people, who these characters are. And I understand that you brought some of your family into this.
Oh yeah.
A little bit. Talk a little bit about how your kids kind of figured into.
Well, my son Jonas has the haircut that all these poets have. Now, there's not just one poet. There's going to be more, and they all have this really cool haircut that's stretched back to my old boxcar racer days. And my son has it, and he's
Simmer down.
And my son has it, and he looks like this little miniature poet. Angels and Airwaves, the logo of the band AVA is really A with an upside down A, but it's like AVA because it looks like my daughter's name, Ava. The next book that we're launching for a different thing that we're so excited about this one, is one of the main characters is Jennifer, after my wife. So it just everything I do is an ode to the family.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get some kisses. But
I'm beginning to like these people more and more. So a couple things. So I want to ask you about kind of the world you're creating here, and some of it is, if I understand correctly, based on some of these studies that were done at Stanford about dreams and nightmares. Talk a little bit about that and how that influenced your thinking in terms of developing this story.
I would have never thought that nightmares serve some grander purpose. Who would have known? And whether or not they serve the purpose that that Stanford was thinking they do.
Yeah.
But they even did it with mice. It was so mean. They had a mouse run through this maze like 1,000 times, and then they stuck this electrode right into its brain, so you see it sticking out of its skull. And then they would have it go to sleep, and it's like kicking in its sleep like a dog does, But then they had the electrode be able to map on a computer screen. It was still going through a maze. It was drawing this line on the computer screen, even when it was sleeping. Then wake the fucking thing up, 5 a.m. Wake up! Wake up! Jeez! And then it would run through the maze and be better.
Yeah.
And I think that was really interesting. That's really probably not too long from when they were doing that. When I saw that documentary, Inception was coming out, the movie that what Nolan did.
Well,
Great movie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what a lot of this. As I'm reading the book, I'm going, man, there's like a Christopher Nolan thing.
Well, I love Nolan. I mean, he's the best.
Yeah.
There's top 3.
Yeah.
He's in there. And
Yeah.
but the only thing that something that resonates with me that's different. Inception is a movie like that, as amazing as it, I mean, I literally rented out the theater for my friends for that movie. That's how I was excited with it. But it wasn't an inspiration for Poet for me.
Yeah.
Poet was more like Peter Pan or something. But the idea of dreams conquered, like a franchise, something that can go on forever and get better and better and better. About dreams has never happened.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in a one-off. I was interested in something where there's a mythology and it could be built upon. And so it was a kind of a different exercise for me.
You know, some of what's been discussed, not only in the book, but in some of these studies, is the ability or the effect that dreams and or nightmares can have on your decision-making process.
Yeah.
As you're walking around in the real world. Have you had that experience?
I think, well, probably, yeah. I mean, you got to imagine you spend half your life dreaming. Half. And it's like when people say they don't want to spend the money on a good mattress, and you kind of go, dude, you're in that thing a lot, At least get one that vibrates is what I'm But I think with dreams, we don't really know everything about it. It feels like a download. There might be some intelligence out there that's downloading you every day. You never know, but you might be learning from it. But the idea that you would wake up and make a decision based upon something that you don't even remember, that's real.
Yeah.
Think about all the things that come along with dreaming and paralysis when you sleep, or people that have outer body experiences, or people that have night terrors, people that see things in their room and wake them up and take them into spaceships. It's a lot of stuff happens at night. We gotta be fucking careful.
So how much are you invested in the idea that there could be, and this is a central part of the book, lucid dreamers, people who can actually control what they do in their dreams?
I do know that it exists with the people that say they can do it, and that was, it's kind of like it's kind of like alien abduction. Like, no one wants to believe it's real, but yet millions of people are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
All different generations, all different continents. So, at some point, someone's going to say either it's a mass hallucination or it's something that's real, but we got to study it nonetheless. And I think with lucid dreaming, if all these different people on all different continents are talking about it, it's worth the study. And I'm sure there is. I can't do it. I feel like I've had those times before where you're sleeping and you're like, wow, this shit's real. Like this is, and you're a little bit more conscious.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a couple instances that were really pretty interesting. I remember being in a van on tour one time, and I was sleeping in the back of the van, and you're totally asleep, and then all of a sudden I sat up, and I saw my bandmates in front of me in the van, and I looked around, and I saw the expansive desert. It was like 3 p.m, and then my body sat up. And I felt my body come up after I sat. I was like, what? And they're like, what? And they're trying. Did you guys see me? I was invisible. None of it made any sense. But my God, I was coming out of my sleep, and it's the only time it ever happened. Like it happened, but it was so weird.
Yeah.
It was really, really weird.
Yeah.
I like to think that there's a lot more to existence than what we know.
And what you created in the book, which I think is one of the most fascinating parts, is there's a dreamscape, a dream world, and the waking world, and these characters go between the two, and some do that pretty seamlessly, and others don't.
Right. So the way we had to play, and this is one of the things that we had to do with the book, is we're like trying to define the rules of this mythology. Like, where are the limits with what these characters can and can't do? What we liked was bringing into the idea. We like to bring in on the dark side, possession. One of the things in the first screenplay that I messed around pretty strongly with was that you would be sitting in your room and the chandelier is moving, and you're kind of like, okay, this place is haunted. But you would bring the camera around, and there would be a couple people fighting on your ceiling, and that's what hit the chandelier, but you don't see it. But every once in a while, artifacts from that battle over you make its way into the real world, and that's what we call orbs of light, what we think are ghosts, what we think are like, whatever we think those things are. But people have those all over. You go to YouTube and just look up whatever you want to look up, you'll see like little weird things that come through that kind of pierce through that curtain.
Yeah.
And so in the mythology, we spend a lot of time doing that, giving people rules and what they can and can't accomplish. a poet can't really fight, but they can tunnel, because we wanted to be able to explore the vast corners of outer space. A night stalker is somebody that was sleeping, and this REM, REM is rapid eye movement, but REM would take a soul. So now this guy, when he's asleep, he's being used as a soldier, but when he's awake, he's possessed. Playing with the idea of soul and all different forms of consciousness. Yes. But everybody had kind of different jobs, which allowed us to do a lot of different things.
Yeah. And you had characters in there who fulfilled certain very kind of specific roles, and I'm gonna mess up this name, Jarabek.
Jarabek's guy.
Yeah. So he, he's like the from the 40s and 50s, the soldier who's,
yes.
He's battle hardened, he's been through the war, he knows exactly what to do.
It's funny, when we came up with the idea of a dream walker, was I said, you gotta take a battle-hardened leatherneck from World War II.
There you go.
And that's what these guys are.
Yeah.
They're beat to shit, they're tired, and they're fighting every single night. So one of the great things that we did with these characters is this thing called a halo. And that was to become somebody that serves a purpose, to fight for somebody else. A dream walker, you have to bear your soul. So the halo became the soul. That's the cover of the Angels and Airwaves Dream Walker album, that big circle. So you put your soul out there for people to see, and then that soul can be used as a weapon, and you'll see some animations coming out with that, and you'll see how that works. But every time you fight, your soul gets hammered, and it gets chipped away, and you become harder and harder, so you lose a piece of yourself while you do this. And Jarabek is people with good intentions, but they're just, it's like a guy that's coming back from war. You went there, but you don't know after a while, what you were fighting for, you know, and that was important to me.
Yeah, the novel is basically pitched at young adults, and I'm wondering why that audience. What is it about that audience that interests you?
Oh, well, because the imagination is still wild. When you're a young adult, I think you haven't really failed yet, and you haven't really won yet, so you're not scared of too much.
Yeah.
It's not till you kind of get closer to like your late 20s where you kind of go, shit, I better really figure out what I'm going to do. But when you're between the ages of like 16 and 28 or something, you're pretty invincible. Yeah. And they'll come along for the ride. They're not cynical yet. They're not going to go, Rem doesn't do that. There's no way.
This makes no sense.
This makes no sense.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen. So so I just love that age. Plus, it's like everyone wants to be young again,
right,
but no one knows how. But when they make a piece of art that does that, it transcends demographics.
Mm-hmm. So you've been describing, setting up the rules of the world and the characters and how you did this. How long did it take to do this?
A long time. So we started Poet Anderson, the animation, probably 3 to 4 years ago. Started writing the novel a good year ago, or maybe longer. The comic book series were not too much longer after that. But I mean, from creating the character and then bouncing forward 5 or 6 years and then getting to work on it, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
You could probably debate that it's been between 10 and 15 years, but the hardcore work on what this is over the past 3 to 4 years.
I'm wondering in the process, how much, because I want to talk about the EP that comes with the book in a minute. How much have you changed as a creative person?
A lot. Well, I'm learning so much. I mean, I'm learning so much. We're doing. When I come up with a good idea, I stick with it. That's the difference. I can come up with a lot of ideas, but anyone can. When I come up with something, I go, you know what? This is something that's capable of me growing, and I still will like this. This is something that's big enough and ambitious enough that in 4 years from now, if I really want to become a space engineer and build spaceships, I could probably put those spaceships in the movie or the book or something. That's kind of how I think. Come up with projects that can last long time and grow, and then as I grow, I'm still interested in what I've created. But I plan for that. I plan for my evolving ideas.
Did you did this book, did the writing process give you a little insight into your kids?
Oh yeah, it's fun too. When I went to Comic-Con for the first time, I was like, this is a place you can be a kid with your kids. It's so cool. Like, you're like, oh, it's okay to dress up in blue spandex because this is industry. This is multi-billions of dollars going on here, so I'm gonna wear weird shit. But and I think but I loved it. And I walked around, and this is the other thing that I don't think anyone knows. Once again, I don't really communicate my thoughts that well to my fans, but
here's your chance.
Okay, well, I want you guys to know this. When I walked into that, and I looked around, I saw $200 million movies, 100 million video games, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of comic books selling, toys that are made from all over the world, all the Targets and Walmarts and the retail people coming there, all the fans. I was like, that's the most ambitious art you can make. You're not just writing a song that took you however long to write, then however many months to record, and then rehearsal, and then go on the road again, and then you're like, God, for the past 2.5 years, I got 12 songs out. That's great, and half of which I only had a little bit of say on.
Yeah.
But when you do something like that, that's big. That's hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of people, and a strict hierarchy that really creates a system where people can be the best at what they do.
Yeah.
And they all come together and they all spend a lifetime being good at their one thing. Like a guy that does the lighting on a movie, a guy that does the editing on the movie, the director of photography, even the guy that does, the shadows and rain on an animation, the guy that does all the marketing and the brand. It's just, there's so much to it. And I was like, that just seems like a bigger, just a much bigger piece of art.
Yeah.
And that it still involves music. So I was kind of...
Well, and speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about the EP. Because you've described the music as being experimental and artistic.
It's probably not. I shouldn't say that shit. I sound like a dick. Yeah, I'm sorry. I will forgive me.
I can only work with what I'm doing.
I know. I'm just as God made me.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Because I read some interesting stuff about how you came up with this, and there were kind of impulses or sounds that you heard that you built the songs from.
Yeah, usually in the past, I would write the song on an acoustic guitar, because I was always like, if it sounds good on an acoustic guitar, it's going to sound really good once there's like 120 tracks of instruments going. Yeah. On this, though, we would start with something which would we wanted something that didn't take the front seat. We wanted you to be able to read the book. Mm-hmm. Because of technology now, they have these enhanced books, and we're doing them where you can listen to music as you read. You can open up pictures. You can see a lot of different things. You can use your iPad to spin around, and all this shit happens. It's really cool, So we didn't want the music to come in and just be blaring at you and annoying, as you're trying to do something else. So we thought the best way to do that would to be follow the song down the rabbit hole. Go into the studio not with anything written, but just jump on some type of a tool, an instrument, and I call them tools, but they because I'm a tool. I saw the joke coming too, and just see where it takes you. And for me, it's usually beeps.
Yeah.
Beeps.
Yeah. Well, what is it about beeps that
it sounds like space. I like space.
That gets you going. Because talking about the song "Into the Night." So one thing you said about that.
Song, yeah.
Yeah, that it's walking the person you love through a nightmare.
Yeah. I think so much of what this was about was that I always love the anthemic stuff. I always like stuff that makes you feel like you're going to go out and conquer something.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a big thing that I'm into, and so I've always been trying to write songs that do that. With the song Into the Night, that was kind of the personification of that in some ways of what the whole poet mythology was about. The whole idea with a poet too, by the way, was that you have to be very, very emotional, and you have to be able to be so sensitive and compassionate that you can feel the person you're guiding, you feel what they're going through. And so that song was meant to kind of capture some of that, know. But then everything has to rhyme, and you can only say a few things. Or shit, does everyone know what I'm coming at this thing? There's so much to it.
So, amongst all of that, so
it was very experimental and artistic.
Yeah, very experimental and artistic. Thank you for that. So, you're writing a book. you're releasing an EP at the same time, and at some point this year you announced that there were 2 Angels and Airwaves records, and I think 2 other projects.
Yeah.
And the question is not necessarily about those projects. Do you work better when you just have multiple things going on at the same time?
I think I do, but also remember all these things are very difficult and they take a long time to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if I have a big call and we spend a few hours outlining something, I might not need to talk to that person for 2 or 3 weeks,
Right.
you know. And I also work with a lot of great people, and everyone's doing something, you know. I'm doing a lot of managing, producing, and guiding, and creating an architecture for all these things to come together. I'm not necessarily the one that's setting up, you know, the big camera that has to operate on big computers and do all these things, you know. I do my thing and people do their thing. And the other thing is movies just in general, and all these things are attached to movies. Mm-hmm. It's like starting a company where you have to go around and beg for money and pitch your thing and get people to believe in you, and then that one meeting leads to the next, and it's just a long process. And I had a lot of experience in that because I built a few companies over the years, and it's tremendously difficult, and it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a long time. So getting into this new area, the best thing I figured out was to lay out, there's 4 big projects, and create them and do them in tandem with one another, and now they're all starting to come. It just looks like I'm like the busiest guy ever.
Right.
But
right.
But I've had a lot of help.
And you're working with other authors now
yes.
as well. Different than working with Suzanne.
Super different.
Yeah.
They're all very different.
Uh-huh.
It depends.
Are they all? Sorry. Are they all kind of in the same genre, or just completely different?
The next project it's a very elevated type of literature because it's the author.
Experimental and artistic. Sorry.
Artistic. I thought you were saying autistic. No, it's not artistic. He's a distinguished Shakespeare professor, believe it or not. And he's a New York Times best-selling author. This is one of them out of 5 authors, and they're all doing trilogy, lots of stuff going on. But this one that's coming out next is he won Book of the Year for Hamlet, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to take the job because can you imagine the press of a Shakespeare author and a punk rock guy from San Diego, California? And I said, I can't imagine that.
It's the same thing. Did you go down agents, Shakespeare author, and find somebody to call?
It was the same agency. So I told Suzanne's agent, I said, listen, I got a project that is very, very important, and I need a very important author for it, and this was brought back to me. Yeah.
That's great. So on the flip side of some of this, has music provided you, working on music, has provided you with kind of the experience or the knowledge base that's been helpful in working on these other projects?
Oh yeah, being in a band, you have to constantly reinvent yourself. You have to constantly be reminded, how there's someone better than you every other weekend, and you have to you're constantly reminded how you would have nothing without your fans. So you have to take into account what they're thinking and what they're interested in.
Yeah.
And all those things matter. It doesn't matter what art you do. It doesn't matter if it's making an album or a movie or a book or whatever. You have to thinking about all those types of things is the hard work involved. I mean, if you want to have like a casual life and you don't want to be in a band, I mean, you never sleep. It's really, really hard work, and you're exhausted all the time, and you're almost always sick, and you're fighting with your business partners all day long, and it's just how it is. But I have a very, very strong work ethic because I had nothing when I was a kid. Nothing. I've been working. I had my first job when I was 13. I had 2 jobs when I was 16. And but I think a lot of it's probably because I'm extraordinarily fearful about having to do what someone tells me to do. So I'd rather be doing everything because at least no one's telling me to do that. I don't know. You know.
But that's an interesting point, because all of what you described, including being in a band, is incredibly collaborative. So you have to be willing to take feedback.
Absolutely, and I like that, because I actually take feedback really well. I think, but it has to be from, you have to be with people you respect, and that you really genuinely think that they make good decisions. You know, it's so much easier when you can trust the person. Go, man. Yeah. When that person looks me in the eye and says, like, it kind of sucks what you just did. You go, fuck, he means it, and it's like you know, I agree with him. You know, and that's where it works. So you have to, you know, you have to get people that you really respect, that you build up the trust, and you empower each other, and you can really get it done. And strong debate is a part of it, but if you have intelligent individuals, it's not hard.
Yeah. Speaking of that, as you were kind of laying out the world for the book, were there times when you guys were like, no, it's not that way?
No, never, because you know, the stakes weren't so big that we couldn't find some type of resolution. You know, it's not like, if this is book 3 and we're like, it's like a gigantic franchise and people are now, that's what happens in a band too. I mean, when you start a band, you guys can make a record really easily because nothing's at stake. You know, but you add a few years on that, and you add careers and people's livelihoods and all that stuff, then it's a big deal, you know. Yeah. So I get it, you know. But with this, it's been really easy. So
you brought a little something for us to watch this evening.
Well, okay.
And before, I want to tee it up a little bit.
It's an adult film. I'm sorry.
Good times at the Grammy Museum. So there's an actor in this, Tyler Posey.
Oh yes.
Tell me how you met him.
Okay, so Tyler, obviously he's the star of a show called Teen Wolf. It's been around for a very long time, and he's been having tremendous success with that. He's also a big Blink-182 fan, and for a couple years now, we through people, we're like, you guys should do something together. But it really came to fruition when I went to Comic-Con this year, and I was hanging out with a guy named Dylan O'Brien, which is a star in his show, in the Maze Runner movies. And I met Dylan, and Dylan was like, dude, you gotta meet Tyler. You just gotta trust me. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? Shit, maybe I should just give the guy a call and just see because I've been hearing it for so much for the past couple of years. So I went over and got his number through my agent, and we got him on the phone, and he came down to San Diego, and we just had a really great conversation. And I said, well, let's do a short film. And he said, I'm in. And I was like, okay, I don't have any ideas at all, but we'll come up with.
It's a great idea.
It's a great idea. And so we put together an idea, and we started. The problem is he just starts filming his new season, so we can only do it like on weekends. It's been exhausting. We'll do it all night long, and we have like one more day to shoot. We have like one more day, but I think it's going to be a pretty fantastic piece. It's not going to resemble what the film will be like, because the film is going to be major amounts of resources put into the live action film. But this short film will give you an idea, and it'll be fun, and it'll have a tonality that I think people can say that it's just really cool. There's so many F words in it too, by the way, and that's the other thing.
And it's kind of teeing up the world a little bit.
It's teeing up the world a little bit. It really is, and it's not going to be that long. I think it'll probably be between 20 and 30 minutes.
Right.
But what I think it will give you a great idea is just, it's like you said, it's like looking through the keyhole and seeing a little bit about what's to come. Yeah. And once this was just a fun way to get out and do something.
Cool. Are you going to release it?
Yes.
How are you going to release it?
Don't know yet.
Glad I asked.
We will release it, and we'll probably do some fun stuff with it for sure. It'll go out worldwide. We'll probably put it up on Apple and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, the goal was to have it ready with the book. We just can't pull it. When Tyler started filming, we just didn't have the time.
Yeah.
So
new music to go with it as well, or
yes, I'll score it, and we'll probably have some of the Of Nightmare stuff in there, but I'll definitely do new music for it for sure.
And the book is now officially out, yes?
It is out officially as of just a few days ago.
And so in the midst of all of this stuff, books and short films and long films and all this stuff, you're gonna take a band on tour, or is that not in the cards? Because I'm sure that these guys want to know.
You guys, do I have to go on tour again?
And what? Totally up to you.
Oh God! Yes. Yes. So one of the things we're talking about is I just got to get this set up appropriately and the gears moving,
Sure.
and then having this come to life with technology.
Yeah.
On performance is going to be pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
The things that we're talking about, the things that are in the meetings, the things that we're dreaming up. Sorry, but it can be really cool. You know, bringing Poet Anderson with, 3D, geo mapping, augmented reality, things that can make, things that I've been wanting to do with Angels and Airways for 10 years, and I think we can do that now.
Yeah.
But it's just, I need a little bit more time.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first, so a little more time, but nonetheless, thank you so much.
Oh, this is awesome.
For coming to do this. Tom DeLonge.